Officers Hale and his crew treated the streets like their personal kingdom, wielding badges as armor against accountability. Malik Jordan knew their kind. Cops who saw black men as convenient prey, who used power to intimidate, beat, and bury misconduct under doctored reports and vanished evidence. He'd watched it play out too many times. Neighbors pulled over for nothing, friends humiliated on the curb, families shredded by a system built to protect itself. But Malik wasn't some man they could quietly erase. He was a former Marine, tougher now, pushing 45, trained to endure and outlast. He refused to wait for the next victim. He would expose them, force the world to stare at what they'd done. The plan was risky but necessary. Hidden camera, staged encounter, undeniable proof. He'd give them a chance to behave as usual, and once they did, there'd be no spinning it away. No more disappearing evidence, no more whispered rumors. This time, justice wouldn't just be demanded, it would feel inevitable. Before we go any further, drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. Malik Jordan walked slowly down the cracked sidewalk, hands tucked into his jacket against a cold breeze that slipped between the houses. He'd called this neighborhood home nearly 17 years, longer than anywhere else. It wasn't perfect, boarded windows, shuttered shops, but it was still his, still theirs, still worth protecting. To outsiders, though, it looked like a problem area, waiting to be cleaned up. The signs of change had been subtle at first. Patrol cars started lingering too long on certain corners, crawling past kids playing tag, or old couples sitting quietly on stoops, their eyes scanning like searchlights. Then came the questions, barked instead of asked. "What are you doing here? Where you headed?" Each word clipped, suspicious, like existing on these streets required permission. Malik brushed off the early encounters. He'd been deployed overseas. He'd seen worse, but the pressure didn't ease. It tightened, day after relentless day. A few months back, they'd stopped his neighbor, an older man who ran a tiny cleaning business from his van. Officially, it was a routine traffic check, but everyone understood the truth. Black man, packed van, must be suspicious. His granddaughter recorded everything on her phone, tears in her voice. The clip went around online for a week. People raged in the comments, shared hashtags, promised change. Then the algorithm moved on. Nothing happened. No suspensions, no apologies, just silence. That was what finally dug under Malik's skin. The helplessness of watching his community get ground down without any real recourse. He'd been trained to defend, to protect, to stand between danger and the vulnerable. Yet here he was, watching from the sidelines while the people he loved took hit after hit. He first heard about Jenna Ortiz from a friend who tipped her off about a predatory landlord across town. "She's one of the good ones," the friend insisted. "Doesn't twist your words, doesn't stop until she finds the truth." Malik wasn't convinced. Reporters weren't high on his trust list, especially the ones who swooped into neighborhoods like his, hunting for stories, then vanished when the headlines cooled. But when Jenna called, she didn't sound like someone sniffing around for content. She sounded focused, steady, almost stubbornly calm. She showed up at the community center where Malik was fixing a leaking pipe, a petite woman with sharp features, sharper eyes, and a notebook already half filled with scribbles. She introduced herself, skipped the small talk. "I've been hearing what's happening around here," she said. This isn't random harassment. I think there's a bigger pattern. Malik eyed her carefully. A bigger story, huh? Then what? Another article buried below the fold? Jenna's gaze didn't waver. I'll do more than that. I'll make sure people can't look away, she said firmly. I don't just want to write about it. I want to show it. Malik didn't agree right away. Over the next week, Jenna kept coming back. She talked to neighbors, listened more than she spoke, remembered names, followed up on details. Each time she circled back to Malik. You're the one who can make this work, she'd tell him. People trust you. They'll believe what they see if you're at the center. Malik shook his head at first. I don't need that kind of spotlight. What if you just make things worse? Jenna never changed her answer. What if we actually make them better? She countered. She wasn't performing. She was relentless. She didn't seem interested in parachuting in for a quick hit piece. She was ready to stay until something budged. Eventually, Malik heard himself agreeing, just because someone had to. The undercover idea was hers. People need to see it, Jenna insisted, not just hear about it, not just read some quote. They need to see exactly how it happens. Malik adjusted his jacket and stepped off his block. Every stride, deliberate. This was it. No rewinds, no backing out. He wasn't sure how things would unfold, but he knew he couldn't stay quiet anymore. Malik moved toward the affluent neighborhood, his steps measured. The shift was immediate. Cracked pavement gave way to smooth streets, boarded homes replaced by manicured lawns, and driveways lined with glossy SUVs and luxury sedans. He passed a family unloading groceries from a gleaming crossover, its paint catching the late afternoon sun. The mother's smile faltered when her gaze landed on him. It wasn't outright hatred, but it wasn't welcoming either. Just that guarded, measuring look that said he'd been filed under possible threat. He kept going, forcing his shoulders to stay loose. None of this was new. He was here to show what happened next. A few blocks deeper, the sounds quieted. A lawnmower hummed in the distance, sprinklers hissed rhythmically, birds sang over hedges trimmed with surgical precision and unquestioned privilege. Malik shifted his jacket, feeling the hidden camera pressing against his chest like a second heartbeat. In his head, Jenna's voice repeated, "Stay calm, stay natural." "Afternoon," a middle-aged man called, stepping onto his porch with a newspaper tucked under one arm. His smile looked friendly, until his eyes lingered. "You live around here?" the man asked, trying for casual and missing. "Just walking through," Malik replied. The smile vanished, replaced by a tight nod. "Enjoy your walk," the man said coolly. Malik moved on, but he didn't need to look back to know the man stayed on that porch, watching. Farther up the block, a squad car idled at a stop sign. Malik's stomach tightened, but his gaze stayed forward. The officers didn't move at first, but he could feel them clocking him. As he remained on the same street, their stillness shifted. They weren't just parked. They were tracking. At the next corner, the cruiser rolled forward, slowly, deliberately, not enough to overtake him, not enough to be obvious, but far from idle. Malik's thoughts started racing. Was this it? Was the setup already turning into something more dangerous than either he or Jenna had planned for in their conversations? On the following block, a second cruiser sat along the curb. Two officers leaned against it, chatting casually, but their conversation faltered as he approached. Eyes followed him like sights. One murmured something to the other, and both pushed off the car, peeling away from their relaxed poses to intercept. Malik's pulse picked up. He scanned the street. Quiet houses, trimmed lawns, no real witnesses. He focused on his breathing like he had in the Marines. Slow in, slow out. Stay grounded. "Excuse me, sir," one officer called. "Mind if we have a word?" Malik stopped, straightening. "Sure," he said evenly. "What can I do for you?" The first officer, broad-shouldered with a square jaw, stepped closer. "We got a call about someone matching your description. Said you were acting suspicious." Malik raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious how?" The officer folded his arms. "Just wandering around. You're not from this area, are you?" "I'm just out for a walk," Malik replied. The second officer, taller and lanky, joined in. "We're going to need some ID, just routine." Malik hesitated. "Am I being detained?" "Not yet," the first officer said, a smirk creeping onto his lips. The word "yet" hung in the air like warning. "If I'm not being detained," Malik said calmly, "I'd like to keep moving." The officers shared a look. The smirk disappeared. "Not so fast," the first one said. "We've got some questions." Malik felt that familiar shift, the moment where an encounter stopped being casual and started hunting for an excuse. "Don't see many guys like you around here," the taller officer said, eyes narrowing. "Big guy like you, walking this neighborhood, kinda stands out, don't you think?" Malik's tone stayed even. "I'm just taking a walk." The shorter officer stepped closer, smirk returning. "Walking? More like lumbering, wouldn't you say?" "Maybe you're just strolling," he added, "but most people around here don't call that exercise." They snickered. The taller one shook his head. "You sure you're not casing houses? Big guy like you looks like you're scoping out an easy score." Malik's jaw tightened, but he kept his posture relaxed. "I said I'm just walking," he repeated. "Well," the shorter officer said, smirk curdling into a sneer, "maybe you should walk a little faster before things get complicated." Malik refused to flinch, refused to show the anger rising in his chest. He knew the camera was recording. He knew Jenna would watch. "I'm not doing anything wrong," he said. The taller officer took another step, now looming. "No, you're not," he said slowly, "but you don't look like you belong here. Not really." "Looks can be deceiving," Malik replied, his voice still calm but edged now. "And I'm not going anywhere just because you say." The officers stared at him, silence stretching, tension stacking like bricks. Their bodies shifted, closer than necessary, shoulders squared, jaws clenched. Malik recognized the stance, not curiosity, but domination. Still, he stayed rooted, feet planted, hands at his sides where everyone watching, on camera or nearby, could see he wasn't a threat. "So you're refusing to cooperate," the shorter officer said, his smirk turning meaner. "I never said that," Malik answered, tone measured. "I said, I'm out for a walk." The taller officer lifted an eyebrow, voice dripping sarcasm. "Just out walking, huh? Wearing that? You realize you look out of place." "Out of place how?" Malik asked. "What's wrong with what I'm wearing?" "Nothing," the shorter cop replied, grin spreading. "Just looks like you're not from around here." Malik didn't budge. "I already told you. I'm just passing through." "Then maybe walk yourself back where you came from," the taller officer snapped angrily. "You really think these residents want you standing here?" Malik stayed calm. "I have every right to be on this sidewalk," he said. "I'm not breaking any laws." "Your attitude is what's suspicious," the shorter cop shot back. "Big dude like you, just wandering around, eyeballing houses like they're giveaways. Malik's patience wore thin. "I haven't done anything wrong," he said firmly. "You stopped me. I was walking." The taller officer sneered. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but I don't trust it. You don't look like you belong here, and you sure as hell don't act like it." "What's that supposed to mean?" Malik asked, still composed, but fraying around the edges. "Means," the shorter officer said, stepping closer, "maybe we take a little trip downtown, have ourselves a conversation." "That sounds a lot like detention," Malik replied. "If that's where this is going, I deserve to know my charges." "You've got a sharp tongue," the taller officer muttered, leaning in, eyes narrowing. "Maybe you're not breaking laws, but you're pissing me off, and that's enough to make you a problem." Malik kept his face neutral. "Last I checked, irritating you isn't a criminal offense." The shorter officer laughed, but the sound felt forced. "You think you're clever, huh?" he said. "Big tough guy with all the answers. Let's see how clever you feel when we bring you in." "Bring me in for what?" Malik asked. His voice stayed controlled, but the edge sharpened. "I already told you. I'm walking. That isn't a crime anywhere." "It is when you're casing houses," the taller officer replied, sarcasm gone, tone hard. "We've had reports," the shorter one added, grin fading. "Big black guy, matches your description, going door to door, scoping things out." Malik narrowed his eyes. "You're lying. Nobody called. You never got anything about me." The taller cop stepped up, hand resting near his belt. "You calling us liars, sir?" "I'm calling it what it is," Malik said. "An excuse." "Excuses don't land people in cuffs," the shorter officer said. "But keep going like this, and we'll happily escort you for some questioning down at station." Malik's heart hammered, but he didn't back down. "I've done nothing wrong," he said. "I'm not casing homes, not robbing anyone, and you know it." "Is that so?" the taller officer replied, a sneer tugging at his mouth. "Because from where I'm standing, you've been loitering and looking real interested. Looks like you're out here for more than a stroll." Malik drew a slow breath, steadying himself. The camera caught every accusation, every sneer, every false claim. He could feel the air thickening, the danger rising. "I'm not robbing anyone," he repeated. "If you're accusing me, you better have evidence." The officers exchanged a look, confidence intact, but faces hardening. Their stances stiffened. They weren't letting him walk away. Their expressions darkened, sneers turning cold. Malik felt their stares like weight, their bodies crowding his space, hands drifting closer to belts. He stayed still. One wrong move could ignite everything dangerously fast. "You don't seem to get it," the shorter cop said, voice dropping low. "You're not just walking off." Imam Malik's jaw clenched. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what I've supposedly done wrong." The taller officer stepped closer again. "You got a mouth on you," he said. "Out here, that's dangerous." "I'm not mouthing off," Malik answered. "I'm asking for clarity." The shorter officer barked a laugh. "You're in the wrong neighborhood, big man. Clarity won't save you." Malik held his ground. "I'm not letting you bully me." That's when it happened. The taller cop's hand shot out, shoving Malik hard in the chest. It wasn't a nudge. It was a full-force shove meant to knock him down. Malik stumbled backward, but stayed on his feet, training kicking in, stance resetting automatically. "Hey!" he snapped, voice sharper now. "What's your problem?" "My problem is you," the taller cop snarled, stepping in again aggressively, jaw tight. You think you can stand here, run your mouth, and walk away like nothing? Malik lifted his hands, palms open. I'm not looking for trouble, he said. I'm just standing here. The shorter officer smirked. Maybe you should have thought about that before you got slick. Malik's eyes narrowed, breath growing heavier. I asked why you stopped me, he said. That's not a threat. You're lucky that's all we did, the taller cop snapped. Guys like you think you're untouchable, not in this zip code. Malik's heart pounded, but his voice stayed firm. I don't owe you an explanation. I'm not breaking any laws. You've got no reason to crowd me like this. The words were barely out when the shorter officer lunged, grabbing Malik's arm. Malik yanked back on instinct, the movement cranking tension instantly. The taller cop seized the opening, reaching for Malik's jacket collar. It was no longer questioning, it was assault. Don't put your hands on me, Malik barked, voice ringing out, loud enough for any unseen neighbor to hear. Or what? The shorter officer sneered, grip tightening. Or I'll defend myself, Malik warned. He wasn't bluffing, but he also knew he couldn't make the first move. They'd weaponize that instantly. The taller officer shoved him again, harder this time. Malik staggered, shoulder slamming into a nearby lamppost. It was clear. They wanted a reaction. They wanted him to swing first so they could claim he'd attacked. But Malik refused to give them that easy narrative. I'm warning you, he said calmly. Let go of me. The shorter officer released his arm briefly, trading a silent nod with his partner. Then, without another word, he swung. The punch clipped Malik's jaw, unexpected and sharp, but not enough to drop him. Pain flared, snapping a switch inside his mind from restraint to survival. He ducked as the taller officer followed up, fist whistling past his cheek. Malik planted his feet and shoved, using his strength to create distance. The officers didn't retreat. The shorter one lunged again, but this time Malik caught his arm, twisting just enough to break the grip, not damage. The officer yelped and let go. Enough, Malik shouted. I don't want to fight you. The taller officer advanced, anger twisting his features. Too late, he snarled. You've got one. The struggle spilled into the street. Malik kept his movements tight, controlled. Blocks, deflections, careful counters instead of wild swings or rage. His military training taught him how to neutralize threats quickly, but he held back, refusing to seriously harm them. They showed no such restraint. The taller cop's punch slammed into Malik's shoulder. He grunted, stepped with the blow, then used the momentum to pivot aside, striking the officer's forearm open-handed. The officer jerked back, momentarily stunned. The shorter cop tried grabbing Malik from behind, arms hooking around his torso. Malik rolled his shoulder and spun, breaking the hold, shoving him away. They came right back, relentless. Every time Malik blocked one, the other tried to slip in from another angle. His breathing grew heavier, each movement deliberate but draining. He refused to crumble, refused to give them the satisfaction of watching him collapse. He wasn't trying to win a brawl. He was trying to survive an ambush. The taller cop lunged again, fists flying, one knuckle grazing Malik's temple painfully. Stars flickered at the edge of his vision, but he stayed upright. "Stop this!" Malik roared, stepping back, hands still raised defensively. "I don't want to fight." The shorter cop spat near his shoes, chest heaving. "You don't get to decide that, big boy." Malik swallowed the insult, rage burning quietly. He tried to back up, putting space between them, But the taller officer didn't wait. He slammed his shoulder into Malik's chest, driving him backward. Malik's feet slipped, and he hit the pavement hard. Pain flared across his back as asphalt scraped through fabric. Before he could rise, a boot pinned his arm. "Got you now, big man," the shorter officer sneered, grinding his heel into Malik's forearm. Malik's teeth clenched as pain shot up his arm. The taller cop crouched close, breath hot, eyes gleaming. "You thought you belonged out here," he hissed. "Thought you could walk around like everyone else?" Malik tried to yank his arm free, but the pressure increased, muscles screaming. "I didn't do anything," he forced out, each word strained. The shorter officer crouched too, smirk widening. "You did enough, heavy boy. You should have known better." His fist drove into Malik's stomach, knocking the air from his lungs. A deep ache ripped through Malik's core. He gasped, body curling despite himself. The taller officer laughed. "Not so tough now, huh?" Malik's vision swam, but his mind stayed clear. If he didn't act, they wouldn't stop. He exhaled sharply, twisted his core, and jerked his trapped arm sideways hard. The sudden move knocked the shorter officer off balance, forcing him to stumble. Malik pushed, using the moment to haul himself halfway up. The taller cop reached again, but Malik didn't just block. He drove an elbow into the officer's ribs. "Nawalism." The man staggered back, grunting, surprise flashing across his face. Adrenaline surged through Malik. The shorter officer lunged, but Malik sidestepped, guiding his momentum forward and shoving him to the ground. "Stay down," Malik growled, voice low, commanding. He still tried to end this without going too far. But they weren't finished. The taller officer swung again, fist fully committed. This time the punch smashed into Malik's jaw. His head whipped sideways, metallic blood flooding his mouth. The shorter officer recovered fast, yanking Malik's jacket from behind. Malik struggled to keep his footing, but both of them were on him now, raining blows like they were working a heavy bag. Fists hammered his ribs, shoulders, and arms as he tried to shield his face. They weren't attempting to restrain him. They were punishing him. Another punch drove into his stomach. Then, another! His knees buckled, dropping him to one knee. The shorter officer grabbed his collar, hauling him partially upright again, mockingly. "Not so big now, huh?" he taunted. Malik barely heard him over the ringing in his ears. Pain throbbed everywhere. Breathing felt like swallowing glass. He tried to de-escalate, tried to hold back. They just escalated anyway. The baton appeared without warning, cracking down on his shoulder with brutal force. Lightning-shot pain raced down his arm. Before he could react, another strike slammed into his ribs. Malik gasped, body curling. The taller officer snarled, "Still standing? Let's fix that." The baton crashed into the back of his knee. His leg buckled, sending him sprawling fully onto the pavement, limbs screaming. He tried to push himself up, but the shorter cop's boot crashed into his ribs, rolling him onto his back. "Should have just gone home," the officer muttered. The baton dropped again, slamming into Malik's side. Pain exploded along his ribs. His breaths came ragged, shallow as he tried curling away. The taller officer planted a boot on Malik's chest, pinning him. "Stop resisting," he barked, voice mocking. "I'm not," Malik rasped, but another baton strike crashed into his arm, cutting him off. His vision blurred at the edges. He clung to consciousness, to the knowledge that every second was recorded. Then came the weight of both officers leaning into him, wrenching his arms behind his back. His shoulders burned, wrists twisted until metal snapped shut. The cuffs bit deep, far too tight, chewing into skin. Malik lay there, chest heaving, body a map of fresh pain. The taller cop leaned close. "You should have just walked away," he whispered. Malik didn't answer. He didn't trust his voice. He turned his face to the side, cheek grinding against rough asphalt. He wasn't defeated, no matter how broken they wanted him. They didn't know the whole world was about to watch everything they did. They finally lifted their weight from him and dragged him upright. Every pulled muscle screamed. His legs trembled, but held. The walk to the squad car felt endless. A few neighbors stood on porches, phones in hands, faces a mix of fear, anger, and resignation. No one stepped forward. No one intervened. The back door swung open, and they pushed him inside. The seat dug into his battered ribs. The partition ahead was smudged with fingerprints from people who'd sat here before him. Malik leaned his head back, exhaling slowly, replaying every moment, every blow, every word that had brought him here. Outside, the officers chatted with a late-arriving colleague, their postures relaxed. Malik couldn't hear them, but he didn't need to. This was routine for them. Just another night. The car rolled away, lights flashing, casting red and blue on quiet houses. Malik stared out the window as the neighborhood rekeyed. The streets emptied behind them, leaving only stillness and porch lights. He wondered how many people had filmed, how many would keep watching after the adrenaline faded. The ride stayed mostly silent, broken by the occasional crackle of radio chatter. Eventually, one officer said, "Long night ahead." Malik remained silent, jaw clenched. The station loomed into view, its harsh lights burning against the dark sky. When they hauled him out, the ground wobbled under his feet. Or maybe that was exhaustion, pounding through every bruise. Inside, the air smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant. "Charges?" the desk officer asked without looking up from paperwork. "Trespassing, resisting, assaulting an officer," one cop recited. Malik's jaw tightened. "That's not true." The desk officer barely glanced at him. "Take it up later." They marched him to a holding cell and slammed the door. Metal bars rattled, echoing. Malik lowered himself onto the bench, every muscle protesting, ribs throbbing badly. Across town, Jenna's phone buzzed against her desk. She checked the number, felt a chill. She answered, heart rate spiking at the urgency in the voice. "They've got him," the caller said. "He's in holding." Jenna was already grabbing her bag. "Tell me you got the footage," she demanded, voice fierce. More than enough," the caller replied. Jenna was out the door before they finished. Back in the cell, Malik didn't know how long they meant to keep him or what narrative they'd invent next. But he knew one thing. Jenna had the evidence, and once it spread, everything would shift dramatically. The concrete bench leached cold into his spine as he sat with his back to the wall, hands resting loosely in his lap now that the cuffs were off. His wrists were raw, skin scraped where metal had pressed too hard. Each breath stabbed his ribs, pain deep and persistent, unignorable. He rolled his shoulders gingerly, staring up at buzzing fluorescent lights. Voices drifted from beyond the bars, officers laughing, phones ringing, keyboards clacking. The normalcy made his stomach twist. For them, he was just another file, another statistic, another black man in a cage. They'd done this 1,000 times. He exhaled slowly, anger simmering beneath the bruises. This wasn't how he and Jenna had mapped it out. He'd expected harassment, maybe a stop, not a full-blown beating. Still, The speed of the escalation didn't surprise him. "They were waiting for it," he muttered hoarsely. "They never really need a reason." He flexed his fingers, shaking out the stiffness. He needed to stay calm. Remember his training. Emotions could get him hurt worse in a place like this. An officer walked by without stopping, dropping a file at the front desk. "How long you planning to keep me?" Malik called, voice steady. "Until we process everything," the officer said, barely looking up. Malik let out a short, humorless laugh. "Process what? You found nothing. I broke no laws. You just needed a target." The officer finally glanced at him. "Talk all you want. Doesn't change that you're in that cell." Malik leaned back slowly. "I want my phone call," he said. "You'll get it," the officer replied with a faint smirk. "Whenever we get around to it." Malik recognized the tactic. They wanted him stewing, desperate, angry. But he wasn't alone. Jenna had the footage. That thought steadied him. He'd done his part. The rest was moving. Miles away, Jenna sat hunched over her laptop, the video playing in cruelly clear resolution, from the first step Malik took into that neighborhood to the last baton strike. She'd seen chaos on screens before, protests, shaky phone clips, but this was different. Clean audio, sharp images, every taunt and blow preserved undeniably. Neighbors from Malik's block and people from across the city were reaching out, each with their own story about Hale and officers like him. Malik flipped through Naya's folder. Black men stopped for walking in the wrong neighborhood. Parents whose teenage sons were cornered without cause. Workers described being pulled over and searched on their way home in their work uniforms. One message hit him harder than the rest. A scanned handwritten letter. "I was 15 when it happened. Hale stopped me walking home from school, said I fit some vague description. I was too scared to say anything when he slammed me on the hood. Too scared to tell my mom later. But seeing what they did to Malik, I can't keep quiet anymore." Malik exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. They were just waiting for someone to speak first. "They were," Nia said softly. "And now they are." Malik shut the folder. His ribs still throbbed, his skull pulsed, but for the first time since this started, something inside him felt steadier, less alone. "They're not burying this," he said. "Not this time." "No," Nia agreed, voice firm. "They're not." Malik leaned back against the cold wall, gaze steady despite the ache in his body. He was still locked up, still in the middle of the storm, but outside the walls the fight was spreading, and he wasn't the only one pushing anymore. He sat in his cell, forearms resting on his knees, listening to the faint murmur beyond the bars. Something in the station's atmosphere had shifted. The air felt heavier, thick with tension. Cops moved with a wary stiffness that hadn't been there when they first dragged him in. No one cracked jokes walking past his cell now. The casual comments, the smirks, they were gone. They all knew internal affairs was digging, and what they were turning up wasn't just about Malik's beating. It was bigger, older, uglier than one night on a quiet, wealthy street. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Malik looked up as Naya Caldwell appeared outside his cell, expression guarded. The guard unlocked the door and stepped aside while she slipped in, taking a seat on the bolted-down bench with a folder balanced on her lap. "They're still stalling," she said. Her voice stayed calm, but frustration edged every syllable. Malik blew out a breath. What's their excuse now? They say they need more time to review the full scope of what happened. Nia shook her head. Which is absurd. The whole country's already seen exactly what they did. The good news, she added, leaning forward. Ye Internal Affairs started pulling records on Hale's squad. Malik's eyebrows rose. Nia's mouth tightened. It's bad. Worse than we thought. Multiple excessive force complaints, racial profiling reports, cases quietly settled. Hale alone's been accused of misconduct at least 7 times in the last 5 years. But nothing stuck, Malik said quietly. Why? Same reason it never does, Nia replied. Reports disappearing. Witnesses suddenly changing stories. The union swooping in every time accountability got close. Malik let that sink in. He'd suspected it, but hearing confirmation made the anger burn hotter, sharper. And now? He asked. Nia's lips curved into a grim smile. Now they can't bury it. Not with this much attention. Every move they make is under a microscope. She flipped through her notes. Jenna's been relentless. Every time the department tries to twist the narrative, she drops more receipts. And it's working, Nia added. People are furious. Malik leaned his head back against the wall. How bad? She studied him. Bad enough they put Hale and his entire crew on paid leave. Department's pretending it's standard procedure. But Internal Affairs is treating it like a real, full-scale probe. They're pulling body cam archives, reopening files. This could unravel everything. Malik nodded slowly. Good. Nia hesitated, then said quietly, There's more. His brow furrowed. What now? She sighed. There are protests all over town. Outside this station, City Hall, the DA's office. They're demanding your release, and much more. It's not only about you anymore, she continued. People who've crossed paths with Hale's unit are coming forward. The city's finally waking up, and law enforcement has no clue how to contain it. Malik's hands tightened into fists. The truth was finally surfacing. But with it came fresh danger. I need to see my family, he said quietly. Nia's expression softened. Lena and your mom have been speaking out. They've done interviews, told reporters what this has done to them and to you. Malik exhaled, a knot twisting in his chest. His mother was tough, but this was breaking her. Are they safe? He asked. Nia nodded slowly. For now. But they're getting harassment, calls, threats, cameras parked outside the house. Malik's jaw clenched. They shouldn't have to go through this. They know, Nia said gently, but they also know you can't carry this fight by yourself. Malik dragged a hand down his face. Exhaustion tugged at every muscle, but he wasn't broken. Not yet. He looked back at Nia. So how do we push harder? Her eyes sharpened. We keep the pressure on. Keep media focused on corruption, on the fact you're still here without charges. The more noise we make, the more the DA feels the walls closing in. Malik nodded. And Internal Affairs? They're at a crossroads, Nia said. Either they expose this mess, or they look complicit. And trust me, they don't intend to go down with Hale. Malik inhaled slowly. Then we push. As Nia stood, the sound from outside swelled, chants drifting faintly through walls and glass. Protesters shouting his name, demanding justice. The fight was far from finished, but for the first time, it felt like the momentum had tilted. Malik had no intention of letting that slip away. Miriam Blake had never been the type of internal affairs investigator to take shortcuts. In her early 50s, with almost 2 decades on the oversight side, she'd earned a reputation for being meticulous, unshakable, and much to her boss's annoyance, completely uninterested in protecting anyone's politics or reputations. She didn't play favorites, she followed evidence, and the evidence in front of her was devastating. Miriam sat at her cluttered desk, fingers tapping against a thick case file. Reports, statements, preliminary findings, every page pointed to a pattern, a system that had sheltered cops like Hale for years. And now, from the top, the message was clear. Rein it in. Shut it down. Her office door opened and Deputy Chief Leonard Parks stepped in, his presence filling the room with practiced authority. Late 50s, iron gray hair, the man had survived more scandals than he cared to admit. He closed the door, folded his arms. "Blake, we need to talk." Miriam didn't look up right away. "That's what all this is, isn't it?" Parks sighed, stepping closer. "Just got off the phone with the commissioner. Mayor's office is breathing down our necks. The union says this is overreach." "Overreach?" Miriam finally met his eyes. "We've got multiple force complaints tied to Hale's team, ignored, buried, or magically lost. This file barely scratches the surface." Parks leaned on her desk, voice dropping. "You think I don't know that?" "Then why are we having this conversation?" she asked, jaw flexing. "Because this is bigger than one squad," Parks said sharply. "If we push too hard, we open the entire department to lawsuits, federal oversight, public distrust we might never crawl back from." Miriam's expression hardened. "Public trust is already gone, sir. You've seen those crowds outside." "They're not just marching for Malik Jordan," she continued. "They're marching because this has been happening for years. If we try to smother this, we prove every one of them right." Parks exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You think I don't see that? But this isn't just about justice. It's about survival," he said. "If this digs too deep, it won't stop with Hale. It climbs the ladder. Then what?" Miriam's eyes narrowed. "Maybe it finally puts us where we should have been, actually holding people accountable." His gaze sharpened. "You don't understand how this machine works, Blake." "No," she replied, standing. "I understand it perfectly. For years, Hale got away with this because people in power let him. If we fold now, we're no better than the officers who watched him beat people and looked away." Parks shook his head. "If we bury it, the department survives." "And if we don't?" Miriam asked. "Then maybe it finally changes." Silence stretched. Parks studied her. "You're not backing down, are you?" "No," she said simply. "I'm not." He blew out a long breath, straightening. "Fine. Then you'd better be damn sure you can see it through. No turning back." Miriam watched him leave, pulse thudding. There was no going back as far as she was concerned. This case would either shatter everything or expose everything. Either way, the days of pretending Hale was just aggressive but effective were over. She sat down again, already reaching for another file. Across town, Jenna Ortiz sat opposite Darius King and Nia in the back of a small cafe, laptop open, screen splashed with headlines, clips, and live coverage. Protests were growing, pressure on the department mounting. But with that pressure came pushback from those desperate to keep the old order. "They're hitting back harder," Jenna said, scrolling. "More outlets are running hit pieces on Malik, calling him reckless, combative. They're framing the marches as unrest instead of what they really are, people demanding accountability." Darius leaned back, rubbing his face. "Classic play. If they can't erase him, they demonize him." Naya turned pages in a folder, expression unreadable. The DA's still dragging their heels. Even with protests, even with internal affairs cracking open old files, They're betting outrage will move on if they wait long enough. Jenna sighed, closing the laptop. So what's our next move? We don't give them room to breathe, Darius said. Jenna looked up. Meaning? He folded his arms. We've got stories, not just Malik's, other people stepping up, right? We put their stories out ourselves. No sanitized press conference, no carefully edited news piece, raw interviews, live streams, their words, unfiltered. You want to bypass mainstream media, Jenna said slowly. Darius nodded. Those outlets are trying to balance both sides, scared to name this for what it is. But online? That's where we win. Jenna glanced at Nia. The lawyer gave a small nod. Risky, she admitted, but probably our strongest leverage. Jenna tapped her fingers, gears turning. All right, I'll start contacting the people who've messaged us. We'll record their stories, protect their identities if they want. Nia slid her folder aside. Meanwhile, I'll turn up the legal pressure. Civil rights orgs, advocacy groups. If the DA won't move, we'll shove. Darius cracked his knuckles. I'll work the inside angle. I know ex-cops who left because of Hale. They may not testify in open court yet, but they'll talk to me. If I can get them on record, everything changes. Jenna nodded. That would be huge. A heavy silence settled among them, the kind that comes before a turning point. This was it. If they didn't push now, the machine would stall everything until the story faded. Jenna inhaled deeply. Okay, then we stop waiting. We make our move. Outside, the city buzzed with restless energy. That night, Jenna set up her camera in a small rented office. Bare walls, cheap chairs, a desk, tripod, neutral backdrop. It wasn't fancy, but that wasn't the point. What mattered were the voices she'd record here, the stories that would strip away the department's last defenses. She checked the time on her phone. Their first speaker should arrive any minute. Darius stood near the window, arms crossed, scanning the street. His frown deepened. They know something's up, he muttered. Guys still inside say officers are quietly warning people not to talk. How bad? Jenna asked, tightening the focus ring on the lens. Darius chuckled humorlessly. Bad enough they're trying to scare folks before they even sit down. But you know what that tells me? He turned to her. It tells me they're scared. They finally know they're not in control. The door opened. A woman stepped inside. Mid-40s, conservative gray sweater, slacks, posture stiff with nerves. Her fingers gripped her purse strap so tightly her knuckles blanched. Jenna offered a gentle smile. Monique Harris? The woman nodded. Yeah, I almost didn't come. Darius stepped forward, voice calm. We get it. You don't have to do this if you're not ready, he added. Monique stood quietly for several seconds, breathing slowly, then shook her head. No, I do. My son, we got him out before they wrecked his life. But how many parents didn't? Jenna gestured toward the chair by the camera. Take your time, Jenna said. Just tell us what happened. Monique hesitated, then sat. She exhaled shakily, hands clasped tight in her lap. The red light on the camera flicked on. She stared into the lens. My son was 17 when they arrested him, she began, voice trembling. They said he matched some robbery suspect. He was just walking home from a friend's house. They slammed him on the hood, went through his pockets, called him a thug. Tears shimmered, but she kept talking. They processed him like a criminal. Took months to clear his name. He still wakes up with nightmares, she whispered. He doesn't like walking alone at night anymore. Jenna listened quietly, offering soft nods but never rushing her. Monique's fingers twisted together, I tried filing a complaint. They shut me down, told me if I kept pushing, they'd find something on him. She let out a bitter laugh. He was a kid, straight A student, and they were ready to wreck his future because it was easier than admitting they were wrong. Darius exhaled, jaw tight. He'd seen this pattern too many times. Monique's eyes hardened. Hale's squad does it because they can. Because nobody stops them. Jenna exchanged a glance with Darius. They both knew this wasn't only about Malik's case. It never had been. By the time Monique finished, Jenna's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. More messages from people ready to talk, others asking how they could help. While Jenna recorded testimonies, Nia sat in a downtown conference room with leaders from several civil rights groups. The energy was tense but focused. "We've got momentum," one organizer said, dropping a thick stack of petitions on the table. "People are rallying behind Malik, but we can't let up." "The DA's stalling because they think this will fade," Nia replied, flipping through notes. "We need to prove them wrong." An older attorney with graying hair nodded. "We've already filed motions demanding expedited review of Malik's case. If they don't respond soon, we escalate, state, then federal." "And internal affairs?" Nia asked. A woman at the far end, a former prosecutor turned activist, folded her hands. "They're investigating but cautiously, hesitant, still hoping pressure dies down so they can quietly minimize fallout." Nia exhaled sharply. "Then we make sure it doesn't. We keep this front page every day." A younger organizer, scrolling their phone, looked up. "Protests are expanding. Streets downtown are blocked. People are chanting Malik's name, calling for firings and charges." They hesitated. "But there are counter-protests forming too." Nia's expression darkened. "Of course. Police union loyalists. People more loyal to power than truth." It was the same pattern she'd seen in other cities. Anytime someone challenged police abuse, defenders rushed in, no matter how damning the evidence. Nia leaned back, thinking, "Okay, we keep legal pressure high, we boost first-hand stories. The DA wants this gone? Too bad, we make it inescapable." Back at the small office, Jenna closed her laptop and looked at Darius. "People are reaching out faster than I can respond." Darius nodded. "Good sign. But we need to move carefully. The department still holds power. They're not going to roll over just because the truth's out." Jenna's jaw set. "Neither are we." The movement was growing. The truth was spreading beyond any one broadcast. And soon, the people who had built careers on silence and intimidation would have to reckon with something they'd spent years underestimating: a community that refused to shut up. Outside internal affairs, the sound of chanting bled through the walls as Miriam stood in the IA briefing room, clutching a new folder. Several investigators were already seated, murmuring quietly, tension hanging thick. Protests hadn't slowed. Media trucks crowded the street. The department was out of places to hide. At the front stood Captain Omar Velasquez, head of IA. He looked up as Miriam entered. "Blake, you said you had something." She nodded, dropping the folder onto the table and flipping it open. "We just unearthed sealed complaints against Hale going back a decade," she said. "Some dismissed, others disappeared." Murmurs rippled through the room as Velasquez scanned the pages. "How did we not see this sooner?" he asked. Miriam's jaw tightened. "Because someone buried it. This wasn't sloppy filing. It was deliberate." She pulled another file from her bag. "And it gets worse," she added grimly. Older reports link Hale to a repeat pattern: false arrests, excessive force, targeting black men in wealthier areas. This isn't a one-off. It's a blueprint he's used for years. An older investigator, Rivas, leaned forward. We talking cases where people actually did time because of him? At least 5 we can confirm, Miriam said. She flipped to one highlighted file. Take this, young man named Devin Ross, arrested on bogus resisting arrest charges. Arresting officer? Her finger tapped the name. Hale! Rivas exhaled hard. I remember that. Kid swore he hadn't done a thing. But the department backed Hale and crushed him, Miriam's voice sharpened. That's exactly why we can't soft-pedal this. If we act decisively, we don't just get justice for Malik. We start repairing damage stretching back years. Velasquez was quiet for a long beat, then exhaled. All right, Hale's done. The room froze. We move forward with termination and criminal charges, he continued. His whole unit gets suspended while we review every case they touched. No more desk duty. No more wait and see. We do this by the book, fully documented, fully transparent. Miriam nodded, but she wasn't finished. That's still not enough, she said. Velasquez looked up. Excuse me? If we stop at Hale, we're slicing off one infected limb while the disease keeps spreading. She swept her gaze around the room. He operated like this for 10 years. Someone shielded him, several someones. You want to earn public trust back? She asked. Then we hold the people at the top accountable too. The ones who signed off, who lost files. Uneasy glances flickered between investigators. Everyone knew what she was saying. Velasquez hesitated, then nodded once. Fine. Keep digging. Find everyone involved. Outside, protest chants swelled. Inside, emails flew through the department. Officer Hale, terminated. Officer Grant, suspended, pending review. Officer Daniels, suspended. Officer Phillips, under investigation. It wasn't just Hale anymore. His entire squad was under the microscope, their once comfortable careers suddenly crumbling beneath the weight of long-ignored complaints. In the precinct, hushed conversations replaced swagger. Some officers, long loyal to Hale, muttered about betrayal. Others, those who'd gritted their teeth through his reign, began quietly boxing up their desks, knowing the wave was still gathering strength. Meanwhile, Hale sat in a windowless conference room, badge and gun already confiscated. A union rep sat beside him, stone-faced, while Captain Velasquez read charges aloud. Hale's face stayed tight, expression rigid, but his fists clenched under the table. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You're hanging me out to dry." "No," Velasquez said flatly. "We're finally holding you responsible." The door opened. 2 officers entered. "Lieutenant Hale, you're under arrest." His jaw flexed, but he didn't fight as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. For the first time, he stood on the wrong side of the system he'd abused for years, and there was no one left to shield him. Miriam watched from her office window as Hale was escorted out the back of the precinct, shoulders rigid, head high, but eyes hollow. There were no supportive cameras, no staged statements, just concrete steps and cold steel. She felt a flicker of satisfaction, then turned back to her desk. A new stack of files waited. Hale was only the start. There were more names, more patterns, more wounds to uncover. She picked up the next folder, determined to drag every last one into the light, no matter how uncomfortable it made the people who'd benefited from the darkness. The city felt different. For years, the community had whispered about what happened when the cameras were off. The surprise stops, humiliating searches, officers who seemed untouchable. Now, for the first time, those whispers had become something louder, more powerful. Word spread fast. Hale and his unit were gone. Not shuffled to another district. Not quietly retired. Fired. Charged. Their names wiped from precinct rosters. Their badges surrendered. Their mugshots broadcast not as heroes, but as criminals. At first, celebration was small. Neighbors stepping onto porches, trading looks that said what words didn't need to, finally. Then the relief spread. People poured into the streets, not in rage now, but in cautious joy. Outside the precinct, a crowd gathered, not with protest signs, but with lifted voices. "You hear that?" an older man said, arms folded, as he stared at the building. "That silence? That's them gone." A cluster of teenagers who'd grown up avoiding certain corners whenever Hale's car rolled by stood taller than before. One boy, maybe 16, wiped his eyes and shook his head. "I thought they'd never touch him." "They wanted you to think that," his mother said, squeezing his shoulder. "They wanted all of us to believe they were above consequences. They're not." Across town, in neighborhoods hit hardest by Hale's patterns, music drifted from open windows. Families spilled onto sidewalks, not just retelling horror stories, but imagining what came next. People who'd once whispered now shared openly. They weren't just angry anymore. They were hopeful. Inside the department, however, the mood was grim. Officers who had strutted through hallways now walked quietly. The ones who'd laughed at complaints, who'd defended tough policing, avoided eye contact. Hale was out, and so were the people who'd shielded him. A young rookie passed an older detective and muttered, "I never thought they'd actually..." The detective cut him off with a sharp look. Neither did they. It wasn't just Hale's reputation in ruins. The illusion that officers like him would always get away with it had finally been shattered. Captain Velasquez watched from his office window, hearing distant sounds of relief outside. His stomach twisted, not with anger, but with regret. He hadn't known every detail, every name, but he'd known enough and hadn't stopped it sooner. Miriam stepped in behind him, silent for a moment before saying, "Didn't need to take years." "I know," he said quietly. Miriam moved beside him, staring out at the small crowd gathered just beyond the glass. "They're not finished," she said. "This is just the first domino." Velasquez nodded, eyes drifting back to the files on his desk. Reopened cases, new investigations, names that were no longer safe. Outside, people celebrated, but not just for what had fallen. They were celebrating what could now be built. Malik Jordan had been their first visible victory, but he wouldn't be the last. That truth was already seeping through the city like dawnlight under a door that wouldn't close anymore. News traveled faster than anyone expected. Every major outlet splashed the same headline across screens. Within minutes, social media lit up with posts, shares, and stitched reactions. The district attorney's office had dropped all charges against Malik Jordan. It was official. Every accusation against him was being tossed out. After weeks of outrage, relentless legal work, and damning evidence exposing Hale's corruption, the state had finally surrendered. Inside his cell, Malik sat very still, absorbing the weight of the announcement. These walls had always felt cold, immovable, like time stretched endlessly between concrete and steel. But now something subtle had shifted. The hum of voices outside, the hurried footsteps, the changed tone in officers' conversations, all pointed to a single fact. This chapter was ending. Their grip on him was broken. He sat on the same hard bench, elbows on knees, fingers laced together. The sounds beyond the door were different. Gone was the smug, offhand chatter. No more chuckles at his expense. No more casual cruelty. Every step felt cautious. Every voice sounded subdued. For weeks they'd used him as proof that standing up came with a price. Now he was proof they could lose. The sharp click of the lock pulled him from his thoughts. The door swung open, and Nia stepped in, presence filling the cramped room. No armful of files, no frantic energy. Her posture was loose, expression calm, but there was something triumphant burning in her eyes. "It's done," she said. "They're dropping everything. Day has no case left." Malik inhaled, letting the words wash over him like warm water on frozen skin. He ran a hand down his face. His mind told him to cheer, to feel pure relief. Instead, there was a slow, hollow understanding of what it had taken. "They fought it," Nia continued, "right up to the last second. Tried to stall, tried to spin it as some complex legal issue needing more review. But they couldn't outrun the footage, the documents, or the sheer number of people demanding they stop lying." Malik sat up straighter. "So just like that?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Nia scoffed lightly. "Not just like that. This only happened because people refused to let them bury you. They marched, called, organized. They fought beside you. That's why you're walking out of here free." For a moment, he let silence sit between them, feeling every second of the last weeks press against his chest. He'd braced for more delays, more games, more excuses. Instead, the fight had already tipped. He stood carefully, joints stiff, and followed Nia toward the exit, each step surreal. Outside, as Malik later walked his own block again, the same streets that had once felt like a hunting ground finally felt like home. The tension had started to lift. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living. And as long as people kept fighting, he wasn't walking alone. Courage doesn't expire. By the time we reach our late 60s or 70s, it's easy to feel like the big fights belong to younger folks. Malik's story reminds us that courage has no retirement age. A man pushing 45, carrying old Marine wounds, still chose to risk his body so his neighbors could walk their own streets without fear. His hidden camera wasn't a gadget. It was a shield for his community. Community is stronger than a badge. Older Americans know how long injustice can drag on, but we also know how powerful a united crowd can be. Jenna, Nia, protesters, and families turned one brutal beating into a turning point. When people our age share stories, call officials, and stand with victims, crooked officers lose their protection, and our grandchildren inherit safer neighborhoods. If you had been there that night, on your front porch, or in Malik's family, or in his shoes, how do you honestly think you would have responded? After everything you've seen in your lifetime, would you still have the strength to speak up, record, march, or call your leaders? Or would fear and exhaustion make you stay quiet? I'd love to hear your experience and wisdom in the comments. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend, so more people your age can join this conversation and help push justice forward together.